successful relationships. My name is Sophie Gibson, and I am a relationship expert, international speaker, and best-selling author of Your Other Half. I decided to start this podcast because, in my opinion, relationships are currently not being portrayed as what they really are. Whether you're watching the news, on social media, the perception given to people is wrong, and my aim is to talk about what happens in the real world, talk about real stories, and listen to what real people do go through and what they think, as opposed to create expectations of something that doesn't actually exist. Now, relationships is not just relationships with other people, it's also the relationship with ourselves. And here today to talk about that, we have Sophie Gibson. Hi, Sophie.
Hello.
So today what we're going to talk about is eating disorders. So first of all, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, please?
So I'm Sophie. I'm 26 years old. I've been I have a degree in neuroscience. I also am now working with people with eating difficulties and body image difficulties, and that's pretty much sums it up at the moment, I think.
Fair enough.
Is there anything else you want to know?
Yeah, and we're going to that.
Yeah, we're going to get to that.
When you were younger, you struggled with an eating disorder. So could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, I think so. I have a little bit of reservations over some of the things that I might say.
Mm-hmm.
So with eating disorder, I know that if people are listening, there might be some things that might be a bit triggering, and I'm going to avoid that as much as possible.
Yeah, of course.
So I am a bit of a non-believer in labels and diagnoses in some respects, especially when it was applied to me, because I think long before it was an eating disorder, it was a real struggled relationship with food. I think it's a really hard thing to pinpoint exactly when it turned into an eating disorder, which is why there's the struggle with a diagnosis. So for a long time I had a pretty bad relationship with food, so a specific pinpoint wasn't really in the equation. I think that's quite true for a lot of people.
And I think you're quite right. And I think an eating disorder is putting you in a box, and then it's more difficult to climb out of said box. But I think, as you say, it happens long before. There are deep root causes to these things. It doesn't just one day, oh, hello, this is what I've got. It was there.
Yeah. So I think for people listening, I think it would be wise to say that my weight fluctuated a lot. And there was times where I had low weight and times where I had a healthy weight, but all the way through that, I had a disordered relationship with food and was diagnosed with different eating disorders and eating disorder not otherwise specified. And it's kind of like a whole journey between all of these different eating disorders, which actually I'm the same person. I'm the same person struggling through it. It's just the way the behaviors and my relationship with food changed over that period of time. So that's the other thing, really. It was a struggle. I was in treatment. I saw therapists and all sorts of people to try and address the relationships that I had with food and my experiences and traumas and all of that jazz around it as well at the same time. And it's difficult. There was a long time of denial as well. So
it's denial and then it's acceptance and to a degree coming out, I suppose.
Yeah, it's not so much a talked about thing, and I think I might fit a stereotype with it. I mean, I have perfectionist qualities. I am female. I am white. It started when I was younger, but I know that it's not just me. So I think maybe the stereotypical kind of helped me with the outage a little, but still it's still a very secretive thing, and it was a secretive thing for me at the time, something very hidden, and I withdrew and didn't want to speak to anybody,
which is also a very, very much a characteristic of that. So would you say it's the relationship with food that's the issue, or the relationship with yourself? Or a mixture of both?
I think that the relationship with food was the way in which it comes about.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. I mean that in the sense that the food itself isn't the problem. It is something that's going on with inside.
Yeah.
But the thing that is most identifiable to other people is the fact that you're struggling with a relationship with food.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I talk about it as a relationship with food,
Yeah.
but I think that actually it's only something that people can see, and it gets kind of and relate to, but they can't relate to the fact that it's something inside of you, that it's the way your mind works. It's the way that it's a battle and it's a struggle, and I think it's something inside of you, but it's something that your brain, for me, could focus on.
Mm-hmm.
It was
around control as well.
Yeah, for me, and it's hard to say the word control, because I think it's spoken a lot within eating disorders and difficulties and stuff. It also kind of then becomes like a buzzword, like control.
But it is a fake sense of control as well. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, carry on.
It becomes it becomes a bit like the relationship with yourself. With it, it's I've written about it in blog posts before. It's a struggle with yourself, and it kind of becomes its own identity in your head. With somebody, which is yourself, telling you certain things about yourself, that you're not good enough, that you can't do this, and if you do that, then you're a bad person, or all of those things. So it is that voice can be very food orientated, but the underlying issues aren't necessarily about that. It's just the thing in your head, basically.
Yeah. And looking back, which, hindsight is a wonderful thing, but whilst obviously it was something that happened over time, do you think there was an actual trigger?
I know for other people there can be a specific trigger point. For me, I think it was exceptionally difficult to try and figure out a trigger point.
Okay.
I think it was one of my problems, is that there was so much going on, and there was the typical being bullied about the appearance, and even though eating disorders aren't necessarily a consequence of the media, you did have the media influences, and I did have a lot of things going on for me over a long period of time. Some of the stuff I didn't really talk about with people, and there was so much going on, and there was so much stuff. And when I went to a therapist or something, it would be like, oh, you've got so much going on, haven't you? Or you've had so much go on in your life. And it's like, yes, I know. And you're trying to get me to unpick a certain moment, and I can't. It's if you address one issue, and they say, oh, why don't we just focus on one issue? And it's like, well,
they're all interlinked a lot of the time as well.
Yeah, they are. And it's a shame when you can't focus the mind as a whole sometimes, and how it's just so complicated, and then you get told you're so complicated, and
that doesn't hope, really.
Yeah, it's like, well, where's the hope for me? But yeah, I think trigger points, I mean, relationships with different people were a big issue. The perfectionist in me as well. The I want to be the best. I want to just do everything to the best possible thing. And I think even people say to me, you always try and go for 100%, and your 100% is so high, you could do 60% and still be
100% more than someone else, sort of thing.
Yeah. But it's just a never-ending drive that I had. So there was lots of things, and I think I was always quite an anxious, child,
yeah,
person,
and would you
sensitive.
say that maybe there was an element, as you were growing up and as a teenager, an element of hormones that played a part in that, or?
I think so, and I was thinking about this earlier actually before we came onto this. One of the things that I got told when I was in sex education in, I think, year 7 was that my period would start once I hit a certain weight.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to get to that weight. I wanted to be below that.
Yeah.
I never wanted to hit that because I couldn't face the change. I didn't want the change. I didn't want my body to change. I didn't want to be out of control of my body. And I felt like it's a very difficult thing for a young person to then suddenly say, oh, you're a woman now, or you can't do certain things because you're going through this change and things. It was very difficult for a young person to understand for me.
Would you say there was maybe an unconscious fear of being an adult and having to maybe responsibilities and stuff?
I think so. I think there was, and I think this term "woman" still I struggle with to a degree. But I think responsibilities. I think I don't think I was without responsibilities. I think when
I just
eating,
mean different responsibilities, aren't they, as we grow up?
Yeah, maybe different responsibilities. But I think with the eating, it manifested in its way that I didn't even have to think about responsibilities because the only thing that was on my mind was food.
Yeah.
Where what I was eating next, what I wasn't going to eat, what my body needed, or what exercise I was doing, or my head was just full of it, and so it did diminish all kind of external things, and it made me kind of numb to everything else. So yeah, it was responsibility.
And do you think did people around you actually, obviously you went to therapy and stuff, so yeah, they did know there was an issue, but right at the beginning, do you think they knew there was an issue?
No.
Because you were particularly good at hiding it, or?
It can make it made me. I'm not a liar. I don't lie.
But you were economical with a truth, shall we say?
No.
Okay.
I in everyday life, I try and be as honest as I possibly can, and I try and be as authentic as I possibly can. And the act of lying terrifies me, and I hate it. But when I was ill, when it came to food, I was the biggest liar.
Yeah.
I was the biggest liar in the world, and people probably knew at certain times I was lying. But it's just the nature of it. It made me very deceptive, and that wasn't me. It completely ripped who I am in about the truth away from me.
And in terms of other people, it's just, as we're talking, obviously, brings back some memories of mine where I remember there was twice where in the workplace, I wasn't in a situation, but there was one particular girl, I was pretty sure there was something not quite right. And, there was potentially a disorder of some description. And there was nothing I could really do about it. And I think I wasn't alone in thinking that. But sometimes it's hard if it's someone you don't know very well. She would have been 21, 22. But then there was another one. It was probably about that age, but I knew her dad. And I remember I found it difficult, but I went to see her dad and I said, look, I just want you to know I have reasonable doubts that potentially there is an issue. I don't know if you have noticed it, but I just wanted to at least raise it because I wouldn't feel good about myself if I then found out that there was a problem. Yeah. And would you say, should people not necessarily question the person, but what would be the best approach if you notice somebody and you think, I think there's an issue here?
I think it is very difficult for people to express it. I think if especially if someone is in denial and is lying, or being deceptive, or just not at that place where they're ready, it's hard to approach them in person. I think if in relation to that person, I think it's always about making sure that you're available to them if they do want to open up at some point about something, and raise a concern with them. And I think there's also an element of keeping yourself safe with that, making sure that you're in a good place to be able to do that for them.
Yeah, and to help them.
To help them. And then when it comes to family and friends and talking about it, I think it's kind of imperative that the relationship that they have with that close person, because I think if it's a partner, you don't know whether the partner could be someone else behind closed doors. You don't know if it's a young person and their family might be part of the issue, and part of maybe some kind of abusive role going on there. I think it is imperative to know the kind of relationship that they have with them, just to keep that person safe, and just don't make something more awkward for them in order to open up. But I think once you can establish that they've had a good relationship with someone, and that you can raise that concern with them, I think there is an element of talking about it, expressing the feelings, and then seeing what might be the best way to help that person. Because I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I know that other people, that one approach is going to work for another person. And an approach is going to work for me. So maybe some form of intervention might work with someone else to get them to kind of realize what's going on. If it's in a loving, supportive way, I'm really concerned, we're all really concerned, we've got your back, might be a really good approach for one person. Another person might say, okay, let's go out together, and we can just do events together and just keep them coming out, and establishing more of a relationship and connection with them, and knowing that you're a safe person to be around for them. And then obviously you have the extreme versions when someone is very, very unwell, and needs desperate help, and I think that is a completely different ballgame.
And I mean, luckily I knew her quite well, and I knew the dad quite well, so I knew that it was okay to do so. But I think, as you say, you need to establish that first, because you don't know the ramifications. So, and if it was someone who was in a desperate situation, what would you advise people to do?
I think the first step is keeping them in the loop. For me, it would have been good if people kept me in the loop, and I think I would be very angry if there was something going to happen to me. I think a lot of people would be angry if things are going to happen to them, rather than them being in the kind of driving seat. But establishing maybe health professionals, getting them involved, getting the support networks up, and maybe going and seeing their GP, or raising the concerns with them, or BEAT or other charities and places. And
in your particular case, when did you realise that you actually had to do something about it?
This is an interesting question. It's a very interesting question.
Is it?
I think with the media, there's always this kind of epiphany moment with people when they have a problem like this. If they have an eating disorder, it's like, oh, I need to get better. This is my moment. And I think for me, it was a series of moments and a struggle all the way through. I think there were times where I was kind of taken to get help, and I didn't want help, so I was going to say that I could follow along with whatever program they wanted me to, and then get out and do whatever I wanted again. And then there were times where I was shocked by myself, or I was shocked by what other people were saying about me. And
as if it was another person,
scared.
As it were.
Yeah, as if it was another person. I think one of the biggest things, one of the shock moments was a health professional, like almost in tears with me, and saying that they wouldn't allow people on catwalks with you, like you, because they would be at risk of having a heart attack. And there is kind of this dissociation with yourself and your body, and you don't until you get told that kind of thing, it's a shock. But is that shock enough? It kind of was, but it really wasn't. And then I think the biggest thing for me is I kept on looking. I couldn't stop watching what people were doing with food. I couldn't stop watching how people were preparing my food. I couldn't. I lost it. I went into an angry fit at one point with someone in a cafe who had got my order wrong, and I got so angry and then went outside, engaged in really bad behaviors, and then I went and I'd been in therapy throughout all of this, and I went to them and I said, I'm not well. I am not well. I really need to get this sorted now. But then the following day and the following week and the weeks after, it was, I don't need to do this. I don't need to do this. I don't want to get better. I want to get better. I can't get better. I'm so scared. I don't know who I am without this. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know who I'm going to be. There's all of this stuff, and it's such a supportive thing sometimes, having this relationship with food that is so disordered. It's so comforting sometimes. So letting that go is really, really difficult, and it's an absolutely massive struggle to let it go. And there's ups and downs throughout the recovery, and I think I was just stubborn in the end and just went through it. I was very stubborn with myself.
I think you raise a point that's very valid around identity, because in what I do with neuro-linguistic programming, there's what they call logical levels, and there's different levels, and obviously one of the higher one, not the highest, but one of the higher one is identity. And if the person or if the issue has become the person, it is really difficult to change, because unless they so wish to change, it's just for safe retreat. And I guess, when I said at the beginning, the reason why I'm doing this podcast is to show what happens in real life. And as you've just rightly said too, in the media, they give you this impression that there's an epiphany. And actually, I'm pretty sure that in 50%, if not a lot less of cases, there isn't.
I think it's so difficult. It's so difficult to challenge as well, because yeah, you're right. No, the media and people, it's like, the other pet peeve is the before and after pictures of people. It's I think it's a bit of a false representation of the issues, because the identity might still be there. Someone might be weight restored, someone might have lost weight, someone might have done anything, but someone that could be overweight could be really restricting, and someone that's underweight could be really binging, or someone that's a healthy weight could be doing anything. It's the identity and the loss of identity and the straight answer of, I've had this epiphany moment, and you see films about it and everything like that, and it's all of a sudden, yes, my identity can quickly change, and there's not going to be this whole journey. And I've recently heard the term, which you might really like actually, that it shouldn't be about recovery, because it's about trying to get back to an original state. It should be about discovery. So the term recovery should actually be changed to discovery, because it's about understanding yourself in a completely different way and growing from the experiences and bringing in coping tools that will help you progress, and discovering your identity again.
And I think it's not just a game, because obviously you'll always be a part of your life, and in fact we get to that in a minute, but you have used that as a positive to turn it around for other people. I think what I wanted to say is sometimes you know, even without an eating disorder, people forget who they are anyway, because they're trying to be all these things to all these different people that they no longer know what they believe in, because they're trying to not believe into, you know, I'm not saying they're just following what everybody else is doing, but they lose themselves. And I think identity, you know, when bad things happen, they do. And that's that. You need to, you know, be part of your identity, but it doesn't mean that it has to control your identity anymore.
Yeah, definitely. I can relate to that a lot. And I think when bad events happen, it is very, very easy to get lost in it, and it to somehow define you. It's the same with sexual assault. People taking that on with their identity. It's something I know pretty well. So it is very difficult to tackle.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult to tackle.
And what would you say about your discovery journey, where you're at now?
I'm at a good place now with it all. I think there are moments, and I think there will always be moments where if something happens that's stressful, that it's very difficult to identify what's normal stress. Like, I know that people, when they're stressed, might eat more, eat less, and that happens with me. And then it's about questioning, am I okay? Is this part of a relapse? No, it's a normal thing. I'm getting out of it. It's just something, it's a stressful time period, and I'll be fine. And I gotta, in a way, trust my bodily instincts and my mental instincts and the coping tools that I've had have instilled in me. But when you have this disconnect with your bodily cues for so long, it's very difficult to unpick it. But generally, my relationship with food is a lot more positive. I am what I used to say in recovery, but it is a journey, and there will be ups and downs. And at the moment, I'm at the peak. I'm at the peak. And have been quite successfully being way above what I was before.
Good. And going back to the relationship with yourself, what do you think has changed now? Acceptance, for starters?
I think there is an acceptance there. I had a weird moment where I had a character drawing done in London. That was really difficult, and I don't know why. I kind of know why it was really difficult, but it was more the focus was on me, and someone was drawing all of my aspects, like my face and everything, and I couldn't see it. But I still did it, and it's those things.
Yeah, and sometimes they don't make you look that great either, as if on purpose. And you're like, what? Why do you want to identify the dodgy mole I've got at the end of my nose? What about highlighting the nice things about me?
Yeah, but it turned out all right, and it was a good experience. And it's more of I can challenge myself to do things like that. Before, I would have been like, I kind of want to do that, but I don't want to. I don't want to be in that position where I'm putting myself in a position where people are analysing my features. But no, it's kind of, there is an aspect of liberation from it, and not being so trapped. And I can actually establish better relationships with people. I can build bridges with people that I lost. So much, and it's blown the world out there for me. I mean, I've managed to get my degree. I managed to get a very good degree, something that I know I would have failed at if I was mentally unwell, very mentally unwell, and I know I would have failed it. But it was about giving myself that time and that place to get into a good place where I could actually be at my full potential and get out there
and do it.
And
in terms of what you're doing now, do you want to tell people about that? Because I think the way you've turned it around is fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, so we host a monthly support group for people, and it is irregardless of diagnosis. It's basically how your relationship with food or body image affects you. That is the most important factor to us. It doesn't matter what you identify as, any other things that people consider taboo. It doesn't matter to us. It just matters that you have a space to be able to talk, to laugh, to cry, whatever you need. There's a space. It's not focused. It's not like what you see in the movies where it's Alcoholics Anonymous or something, where you stand up and you have to talk about yourself and then sit down and sit there and stay. It's very much if you need to move around, you can. If you need to leave, you can. You're not fixed. There's crafts, there's decompression times, there's all sorts really. And then there's we're hoping to do more with people like yourselves, where we get people from different therapies, holistic help, all sorts of things, to try and get people exposed to things that aren't necessarily available on the NHS, or be able to do something kind of more preventative rather than reactive, get people in there earlier and figure out what is actually right for them. I know for me, I had hypnotherapy, and it was a changing point as well for me. My social anxiety went so low after it in comparison to what it was. I'm able to talk to you today.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think certain things just aren't as well known to some people, and I think people sometimes feel like there is no hope, and there is no course that could actually be right for them. I think it's just about getting people exposed and knowing that there's people that understand.
And would you say, because when you were talking about the support group, does it help? Because I'm sure there's plenty of forums online and stuff, but does it help to actually see people who've got potentially the same issue as you, but also sometimes to, as you said, doing crafts, doing this, doing that, actually forgetting about it for 5 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, the conversation isn't all about food. It's not always about the issues. Sometimes it can be just really funny stuff and just to talk. And I think it's about being in the presence of people that do understand. I think it's also maybe about seeing that it's not all about a certain body weight, that there is no criteria on that. I think we have a range of people come see us of all different shapes and sizes, and it's perfectly fine to be struggling no matter who you are, what gender you are. I think the danger with online is, whilst there are good online forums where they can discuss things, but it's kind of restricted in what you're allowed to say, for a good cause.
So that you don't give someone else an idea, sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think that is really good, but sometimes it can be a bit restrictive, and I think it can cause people behind the computer being fearful of what they should write. I think with the groups we do have rules. We do say that there's no numbers and no talk about that, and being respectful to other people. But I think it's good for people that have been there to understand what kind of behaviours can't really be talked about, but less pressure to abide by it in certain ways, just gentle reminders and steering the conversation away, and also being in a situation where people do understand, but and not developing unhealthy relationships. I mean, when I was bad, there was the big pro-ana movement, which makes me fear saying in this podcast, because I think people will be like, oh, what's pro-ana? And go and search pro-ana, pro-Mia, pro everything. But there are very dangerous sites out there for people, very dangerous images for people. And I think having a space and knowing about a space when that's not talked about, and we accept whatever stage of your journey you are on, just so long as you don't influence others. And it's about learning from each other in a positive way, and being able to bounce it back. And on a human level, if we go out, we don't just do the support meetings, we go out for coffee, and then you don't have the pressure to eat anything, you don't have the pressure looking at you doing anything. It is just a conversation about what's happening in your life. If you're going to the cinema that day, or what movies are out at the moment that are really interesting, but there's no where you might get that from other people, where it's like, oh, is she going to eat cake? Oh, is he going to eat a sandwich? Are they going to do this? There's none of that. And I think that takes the pressure off, and then it gives people the opportunity, if they want to do that, fine.
They can.
They can.
Yeah. And so what advice would you give someone listening to this right now and thinking, this could be me? No, this isn't me. Oh, this could be me. What advice would you say to someone who potentially is struggling?
I would say if they're conflicted about it, then that's saying something in itself. I think if there's something inside you that says there's even a little bit of doubt, that doubt is enough, and you are enough. Wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, if it's resonating with you, it's enough. Talk to somebody, talk to someone that you trust, get in touch with us, or come and...
Do you want to give an overview of your website? Because obviously I know what it is, but
the
purpose of the people here.
Yeah, so we're Acacia Dreams, so it's acaciadreams.co.uk.
Okay.
And there's Facebook groups and Facebook page as well to keep in touch with all the events that might be going on. But yeah, I would say no matter what your situation is, you are enough, and it is enough. Whatever the thought is, it's enough for us, and it should be enough for you. And I think that the voice inside that is trying to tell you that it's not okay, that it is okay, and to keep going or whatever, it's lying to you. It's a battle, and we understand it.
And to round this off, do you have any regrets?
I think regrets is I keep saying this, it's a hard one, because the insight that I've had from it is amazing, and being able to find out who I am kind of with what I've had in my past is great. I can be very empathetic. I do feel things, but I think the impact that I had on other people, knowing that some of the people that I love and care about were scared and terrified, and all the things that went on for them, is hard. And I have a regret that they went through that, that it wasn't easy for them, and the fact that it changed who I was, kind of making me an angry, prickly person that didn't want anything to happen, really impacted on them, and that is bad. And being isolated, not talking to maybe my extended family, because I was so ashamed at the time, and that impacted my relationship that I had with them. And there is guilt there that I wasn't there for those times. But on the whole, now I can look back and say it was a period of my life, it was a struggle, but I am so much better now.
And you've turned it around.
I've turned it around. And there's so much that I've learned about myself. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's been really enlightening, and I hope that it helps people to understand it a little bit better, because there are some buzzwords going around, but we don't always know exactly what someone does go through. You just see the horrible pictures, you see this and the other of extreme cases, but you don't necessarily understand how it got to that necessarily. So
and don't be fooled by the pictures.
That too. So that's it for now. Thank you so much. And
No
for
worries,
you listeners, thank you. If you enjoyed the show, then please subscribe and give us a review. And more importantly, come back next week. Thank you.
Thank you.